Have you ever stopped to reflect on what's behind the mask of femininity? The image of the strong, independent, and sophisticated woman that we see every day on social media and in the media? Does this image truly reflect the internal reality of many women? Or does it conceal an immature psychology, built over generations of societal expectations and pressures? The truth is, behind this mask of perfection, many women are dealing with unresolved inner conflicts, unconscious behaviors, and a sense of disconnection between who they truly are and who they are expected to be. But why does this happen? What does the psychology of immature femininity tell us about the choices and challenges these women face? And more importantly, what are the consequences of this disconnection for personal development and how they relate to the world? Want to transform your life? Subscribe now and don't miss any content. Through Archetypes, we are invited to dive into our deepest essence and discover who we truly are. Although the models created by some scholars of Jungian psychology help us visualize the feminine and masculine psyche, they are not a definitive list. They are more like spiritual guides that illuminate the path of self-discovery and healing. Each archetype, with its shadows and light, carries within it a transformative potential, a key to unraveling the mystery of our existential journey. Within us we carry complexes, clusters of emotions and thoughts that arise from unresolved experiences. These complexes are not simply obstacles, but signals that there is something in our psyche that calls for attention, understanding, and healing. They stem from our personal experiences, but they are also intertwined with the archetypes of the collective unconscious, universal patterns of behavior we inherit at birth. Often, the pain we feel is not a sign of failure, but an opportunity for reconnection with our true self. Suffering is not a disease, but the natural response to life's challenges. When we fail to see our wounds as sources of learning, they turn into complexes and begin to command our life, often without us realizing it. It is when the unconscious is not integrated that it becomes destiny, but by illuminating it, we become the masters of our own path. Archetypes, with their primordial energy, offer us the power to transform what seems negative into something positive. But for this, we need to look with courage and curiosity at the shadows that emerge in our life. It's not a matter of asking whether the shadow side of archetypes manifests, but how it manifests. When an archetypal impulse takes over and we later regret our actions, we are dealing with the shadow, the part of us that has been repressed or ignored, but which, in its essence, seeks to be recognized. The shadow is not something to fear or avoid, but rather an ally that holds the answers for our transformation. When we distance ourselves from a part of our psyche, it chases us because it is asking to be integrated. The great challenge then is to recognize that the shadow, far from being an enemy, is a messenger of the soul, guiding us to the center of our being, where we can find the healing for our deepest wounds. In fact, the shadow contains the remedy for our oldest afflictions because it points us to where we need to look in order to heal our fragmented selves. The poison of the shadow, when confronted and transformed, reveals its healing power. As the old saying goes, too much poison kills, but a little poison heals. By integrating the archetypes and their shadows, we can awaken an inner power that guides us in the search for our purpose, emotional healing, and inner empowerment. Jean Shinoda Bolen, in her book Goddesses in Everywoman, invites us to explore the feminine archetypes with a depth that transcends mere psychological understanding, diving into the ancestral wisdom of the goddesses of ancient Greece. These archetypes, which date back more than 3,000 years, are not just myths or fantastic narratives of the human mind. They are archetypal patterns, living forces that permeate the feminine psyche, bringing to the surface the universal and timeless concerns of the human condition. By understanding these archetypes, a woman can not only understand herself, but also the deep relationship she maintains with others, especially with men. Feminine archetypes are beacons of self-understanding, offering a key to unlocking the emotional and psychological complexities of women. Getting to know them is like uncovering the deepest layers of the soul, where we can find the wisdom necessary to heal wounds, transcend limitations, and live according to our highest purpose. The goddesses are not mere symbols. They are living patterns, forces that shape us, and their stories resonate within us. These archetypes also serve men. To better understand women, men can turn to the goddesses and learn that there are different types of women, each with their needs and ways of being. Knowledge of the feminine archetypes can illuminate the path to a deeper, more respectful, and more empathetic relationship, because when we recognize the force that shapes the other, we are able to approach the essential truth of who we are. This is the journey of self-knowledge, and by understanding the patterns that influence us, we can avoid suffering and live more fully. The goddesses of Mount Olympus symbolically represent the totality of the human experience. Each of them is a facet of the feminine soul, and together they form a complete spectrum of human attributes, ranging from virile strength to the deepest vulnerability. However, not all women identify with the same archetypes. In fact, each woman has a unique combination of these forces, some more present, others more hidden, depending on the experiences and challenges of life. Discovering which archetype is most active in your life can be a powerful key to connect with your essence and live more authentically. Feminine archetypes are divided into three main categories: the virgin goddesses, Artemis, Athena, and Hestia; the vulnerable goddesses, Hera, Demeter, and Persephone; and the transformative goddess, Aphrodite. For a woman to experience a life of balance and meaning, she must integrate all of these aspects: the independence and strength of the virgin goddess, the wisdom and protection of the vulnerable goddess, and the transformative and creative power of the Aphroditic goddess. Each of these energies is an expression of her highest potential, and by recognizing them within herself, a woman finds the key to living with fulfillment. However, it is important to remember that archetypes are not moral forces. They do not seek our well-being according to human values, but are primordial instincts that, if not consciously recognized and integrated, can drag us into imbalance. Excessive identification with an archetype can distort us, leading us to lose our humanity, inflate our egos, and get lost in grand delusions. But when we manage to integrate these forces, we do not become one archetype, but rather more complete human beings who recognize and use the wisdom of these archetypes to guide their daily choices and spiritual paths. True transformation does not come from blind submission to archetypes, but from a harmonious dance with them, where we can learn from their wisdom and apply it to heal our wounds, strengthen our convictions, and above all, connect more deeply with our divine purpose. The virgin goddesses, Artemis, Athena, and Hestia, embody the independence and strength of the feminine being who refuses to be molded by external expectations, prioritizing inner exploration and personal meaning. They represent an energy that transcends the desire to conform to societal standards, focusing on the connection with one's own being, with the divine, and with a higher purpose. The resistance to emotional attachments does not mean coldness, but rather a deep commitment to what is essential for her inner journey. The term virgin, when applied to these goddesses, goes beyond the concept of physical purity. It reveals an unaltered and immaculate essence of the feminine psyche, an energy that remains untouched by external influences, preserving its integrity and freedom. A woman's virginity, in this context, is her ability to stay connected to her essential nature, free from the constraints of social conditioning or external expectations. These goddesses represent a part of every woman that is pure, authentic, and focused on what truly matters. They possess a focused consciousness that allows the woman to channel her energy into what she values most. This focus is comparable to an intense beam of light, capable of deeply illuminating a single point, leaving the rest in shadow. In its most concentrated state, this energy is like a laser, penetrating and precise with the power to either cut or heal, depending on how it is directed. The woman who connects with the virgin goddess archetype possesses the ability to focus, to immerse herself in her mission with unwavering determination. Artemis, the goddess of the hunt and the moon, is the ultimate expression of this virgin archetype. From her childhood, Artemis was endowed with an innate power of self-determination. Sitting on her father Zeus's lap, She asked the divine for everything she would need to be fully herself: a bow and arrows, a pack of hunting dogs, nymph companions, and the promise of eternal chastity. These blessings ensured her freedom to live her life according to her own will, without subordination to anyone else. She chose a path of pure self-determination, connecting herself to wild nature, hunting, and the moon, symbols of independent and untamable feminine strength. Armed with her silver bow and accompanied by her nymphs, Artemis lives according to the laws of nature, without restrictions or attachments. She is the protector of wild realms and freedom, able to roam the night, illuminated by the moon, with unmatched precision in her goals. Her connection to the natural world places her in harmony with untamed animals, symbolizing her strength, intuition, and innate freedom. She does not bow to the civilized world. Instead, she reigns over the wilderness, the realm of the untamed, and the purity of instinct. Artemis's relationship with her mother, Leto, and her twin brother Apollo also teaches us about the virgin archetype. Even immediately after her birth, Artemis assisted her mother in delivering Apollo, assuming the role of the goddess of childbirth and offering her help to those suffering in the pains of labor. The woman who connects with this archetype possesses a silent and profound strength, capable of helping other women without losing her own essence. Artemis's dominion over the moon also reveals the importance of the feminine aspect tied to introspection and renewal. At night, she walks paths illuminated by moonlight, symbolizing the power of introspection, intuition, and connection with the natural rhythms of life. Her male counterpart, Apollo, governs the sun and the city. He is the visible, active, expansive energy. She, on the other hand, is the invisible, introspective, and reflective energy. The balance between these forces is essential for a woman to live fully in her journey of self-knowledge. Artemis is not only the goddess of the hunt but also the guardian of freedom and individuality. She teaches us that in order to be truly free, we must know ourselves deeply and seek what is essential for our soul. The archetype of Artemis calls us to disconnect from external expectations and reconnect with our essence, intuition, and inner power. In mythology, Artemis represents wild and independent strength, in opposition to the domesticated order symbolized by the god Apollo, who tends to the domesticated flocks. While he seeks to control what is predictable, Artemis connects with the unpredictable and untamable aspects of nature. She fiercely protects those who seek her aid and does not hesitate to punish severely those who offend her, as seen in the tragic fate of Actaeon, the hunter who, by inadvertently spying on her intimacy, was transformed by her into a stag and devoured by his own dogs. This act, though merciless, reveals Artemis's inflexible nature, viewing the world in polarized terms, as if her actions and choices were either pure or corrupted, good or bad. Artemis's determined nature, with her unwavering sense of justice, is also reflected in the tragedy of the murder of Orion, the man she loved. Provoked by her brother Apollo, who challenged her to hit a distant target without revealing that the target was Orion, she unknowingly killed the only man who had won her heart. This painful event reveals the complexity of the goddess, her devotion to her mission, and her own strength, while also showing the vulnerability of the woman who, though untamable, is also touched by loss and tragedy. The woman who connects with the Artemis archetype finds in her intensity and unbeatable focus. She dedicates herself wholeheartedly to her causes, whether in pursuit of her personal goals or the desire to break barriers and transform her reality. Psychologically, the Artemis archetype is related to the feminine spirit that refuses to be confined by norms or external expectations. She is the woman who lives for her own goals and never loses connection with her mission. She is not easily distracted, but when she focuses on something, there is no obstacle that can stop her. The woman with the Artemis archetype is often competitive, not out of a desire to dominate, but for the thrill and adrenaline of reaching new horizons. This competitive nature, often internalized as a constant pursuit of excellence, can be nurtured or hindered by authority figures in her life, such as parents or mentors. When the paternal figure disapproves of the expression of the Artemis woman, Often because she does not conform to conventional femininity, a deep internal conflict can arise. The daughters of Artemis, who often see themselves as bold, assertive, and focused on their ambitions, may struggle with the feeling that they are never good enough, or that they are far from what is considered appropriate. This conflict can manifest in self-sabotage or in a constant battle with self-doubt. This type of woman carries the weight of relentless internal criticism, preventing her from seeing her own worth, even in the face of success. Furthermore, a significant aspect of the Artemis archetype is the rejection of vulnerability. Many women who connect with this archetype tend to reject what they perceive as weak or passive, such as softness, receptivity, and even the idea of marriage and motherhood. They wish above all to be recognized for their competence and strength. However, this resistance to vulnerability can create a distancing from traditional femininity and the caregiving relationship that is often linked to motherhood and marriage. Another crucial aspect of the Artemis archetype is her role as a protective sister. She dedicates herself to supporting other women, often prioritizing her career or causes over any romantic relationship. This makes her a source of support for those who seek her strength and guidance, but it may also mean that, in her quest for personal fulfillment, she does not prioritize her own romantic desires. The Artemis woman finds satisfaction in being a leader, a guide for other women, but often feels lonely on her journey. The woman connected with Artemis has a deep desire to assert herself in the world, to go beyond the limitations imposed, and to seek her own truth. However, in doing so, she must learn to balance her strength and independence with the ability to open up to vulnerability and love, without losing her authentic essence. The Artemis woman can be a figure of mystery and intensity, often immersed in her own independence to the point of not being interested in long-term relationships. When she does commit to a relationship, it is typically with someone who shares her passion or creative vision. But unlike other feminine archetypes, Artemis does not easily find satisfaction in deep emotional intimacy. She needs the relationship to maintain a certain level of independence and distance. Otherwise, the flame of passion soon extinguishes. If creative harmony or intellectual freedom is threatened, the relationship tends to collapse. When conflicts arise between an Artemis-type woman and men, they often reflect the dynamics of her relationship with her father, which can be complicated, especially if she feels she is not receiving approval or support. The relationship with the father can, in fact, be pivotal in how she relates to men in her life. The Artemis archetype can therefore be seen as a reflection of a woman trying to break free from external expectations and the pressure to conform to a traditional femininity. She distances herself from everything she sees as vulnerability as weakness, a reflection of the goddess's disdain for dependency and the need for affection. However, the shadow side of Artemis reveals a capacity to hurt others, especially when the Artemis woman becomes emotionally distant, cold, and detached. She may engage in superficial relationships where the partner maintains emotional distance, which, paradoxically, is what attracts her. She is like the moon, bright and beautiful, but often distant, unreachable. This behavior can hurt those who love her, leaving them with feelings of insignificance and rejection. When she is not in tune with her own feelings and those of others, the Artemis woman may be seen as impersonal, almost indifferent to the feelings of others, which, while attractive to some, is emotionally destructive to those around her. The destructiveness of the Artemis woman is personified by the Caledonian boar, a monstrous creature that brings destruction and chaos. The boar symbolizes the uncontrollable anger that can consume the Artemis-type woman if she does not confront her own destructive nature. When unrecognized, this fury can spill over into her personal life, affecting her deepest relationships and hurting herself. The heroine Atalanta, who kills the boar with a spear at its one vulnerable spot, symbolizes the need for the Artemis woman to confront her own destructiveness. She must accept that her strength can become a burden, and that anger, if not transformed, can ruin her life. Recognizing this internal anger, as Atalanta did, is a necessary step for her to find balance and restore harmony in her life. Humility is the lesson that returns the Artemis woman to her humanity. By accepting that she is imperfect, she finds the strength to heal. She must realize that while she possesses great power and independence, she is also vulnerable and may not have all the answers. By embracing her vulnerability, she learns to handle her emotions without hiding behind her rigidity and coldness. This recognition of her humanity frees her from the emotional armor that prevents her from truly connecting with others, allowing her to live her truth more fully and integrated. Now, in relation to Athena, the goddess of wisdom and strategy, the archetype of this goddess reflects rationality, intellectual control, and the domination of will over emotion. Athena is the wise warrior, associated with practical intelligence and logical thinking. She does not act on impulse, but instead from a deep understanding of the situation. Her dramatic entry into mythology, born from Zeus' body, made her the goddess who brings clarity and discernment. From her origin, Athena became a symbol of mastery over reason, representing the power of the mind over feelings. The goddess Athena is often associated with the art of war, but not in a destructive or impulsive way. Instead, she personifies a strategic and calculated war, guided by wisdom and justice. As the patroness of heroes, Athena reveals herself as the spiritual and intellectual guide for those who seek to accomplish their missions with honor and clarity. She is also the patroness of several arts, such as weaving and pottery, symbolizing the ability to transform raw matter and chaos into something structured, beautiful, and functional. This warrior goddess, with her armor and spear, is the embodiment of the woman who seeks control, logical analysis, and objective truth. She is, at the same time, the woman who challenges and rejects destructive emotions, staying true to the rational and the practical. For Athena, logic and reason are the greatest allies to win any battle, whether internal or external. But like Artemis, the Athena archetype can also become excessive. When a woman connects too deeply with Athena, she can lose herself in her pursuit of control, suppressing her feelings and emotions in the name of reason, which can make her insensitive and distant. The secret then lies in the balance between the archetypes of Artemis and Athena. Each brings a powerful facet of the woman, the independence and determination of the hunter, and the strategic wisdom and discipline of the warrior. Together, these goddesses can guide women in the pursuit of self-sufficiency and emotional clarity, allowing them to live with purpose, balance, and true connection. The Athena archetype, as a goddess of rationalism, strategy, and pragmatism, represents a woman who shapes her life and choices based on a strong connection to the mind and logical thinking, rather than emotion. Unlike Artemis, who distances herself from men and seeks her autonomy in the wild, Athena identifies with and actively engages in environments dominated by male authority figures. She prefers intellectual control and strategic interaction with powerful men, often playing the role of advisor, strategist, or professional partner, but never deeply emotionally involved. The Athena woman seeks to master the wild nature and emotions, preferring an environment where logic and reason prevail. Her model of adaptation to the world is the opposite of Artemis, as she does not seek separation from men, but integration and collaboration. For her, interaction with the masculine is less about emotional intimacy and more about building power and influence. She excels in professional and intellectual environments dominated by men, such as science, engineering, and the military, where her ability to think strategically puts her ahead, often as the only woman in her field, but completely comfortable with it. She has no time for romantic idealism or seeking emotional rescue. The idea of being saved by a man or waiting for a Prince Charming is completely alien to her. On the contrary, Athena is a mature woman, focused on her career and work, often playing important roles as a counselor or colleague to male figures. Her life is deeply rooted in productivity and efficiency, making her extremely effective in everything she does. She represents a more mature and controlled version of the Virgin Goddess, as she does not let herself be carried away by desires or emotional needs. For her, emotional self-sufficiency is a priority, and she builds her confidence in her ability to think and act logically. Her mind is her greatest strength, and her intellectual armor protects her from emotional turbulence, allowing her to always act with clarity and objectivity. Emotionally, Athena tends to be distant and impersonal. She is not vulnerable to jealousy or anger, emotions often associated with emotional attachment. Her connection with others is rational and professional, rather than intimate or affectionate. She does not allow herself to be influenced by feelings that might cloud her mental clarity or mission. The Athena woman does not seek youth or beauty as signs of success. For her, age is an indicator of wisdom and experience, and the confidence she gains with time only makes her more powerful. As she grows older, she becomes even more influential and respected, as her ability to analyze and plan improves with the years. For the Athena woman, working and learning are forms of empowerment. She dedicates herself to understanding the world in objective terms, accumulating facts, data, and knowledge to make informed and effective decisions. Her focus is on professional performance and the ability to achieve her goals, not on establishing deep emotional bonds. Her path is one of intellectual self-sufficiency and independence, not by fleeing from feelings, but by integrating her rational and emotional life, where she can be impartial and objective. The Athena archetype, with its relentless focus on rationalism, strategy, and objectivity, also carries darker aspects that can manifest in a woman who embodies this energy. The Medusa effect, related to Athena's symbol, illustrates the impact of a woman who concentrates so much on logical results and efficient performance that she becomes impartial and even devoid of empathy. The use of Athena's aegis, adorned with Medusa's head, symbolizes the power to petrify anyone who deviates from the rational and the objective. When an Athena woman assumes a position of authority, she can become critical and dismissive of weaknesses, intimidating others with her lack of compassion. However, the Athena woman often does not realize the harshness of her approach. She is so focused on her mission and what she considers the effective execution of the work that she leaves no room for the emotions or vulnerabilities of those around her. This can result in a lack of emotional connection, making her impersonal, which can lead to emotional isolation or even distancing herself from others. Her relationship with feelings often comes down to her ability to apply a cold, rational strategy. One of the challenges women with this archetype may face is emotional blockage. Often they struggle to express or even access their own emotions because they were forced to mature prematurely, losing the freer and more spontaneous aspect of childhood. The Athena woman was never a child. She was born an adult, with a clear mind and a focus on action, which means she had little room for fantasy, play, or emotional exploration without responsibilities. This darker aspect of Athena is related to the loss of emotional youth and the severing of the sensitivity of the inner child. This archetype reveals the woman who had to abandon her childish nature, being forced to be responsible and adult prematurely. This prevents her from connecting with her own vulnerability, which can create an emotional void that distances her from others and even from herself. The Athena woman needs to reconnect with her freer side, accessing the inner child that was left behind. This can be done symbolically through activities such as play, or more concretely, through creative and artistic activities that require spontaneity, flexibility, and joy, qualities that are often neglected by her in the pursuit of perfection and tangible results. Another dark side of Athena can be seen in the absence of the Great Mother in her archetype. Her mother, Metis, was swallowed by Zeus, and this created an emotional void in Athena's figure. For women who embody this archetype, there may be an absence or distortion of the maternal figure, causing them to often fail to nurture their own emotional needs or those of others. The Great Mother archetype is absent, which can lead to difficulty in dealing with emotional care, both for themselves and for others. On the other hand, the archetype of Hestia presents an important contrast. Hestia, or Vesta, is a goddess of the home and the sacred fire, representing calm, nurturing, and tranquility. She was rarely depicted physically, but was felt as a welcoming and secure presence, the fire at the center of the home or temple. Hestia symbolizes the welcoming and protection of inner space, being a goddess of solitude and centering, a figure that turns to spirit and nurturing the home. She is more associated with the internal world, self-care, and spaces of rest and reflection, being a serene presence that is both strong and welcoming. In contrast to Athena, Hestia is not focused on intellectual achievement or the conquest of the external world, but on maintaining the internal space in balance and harmony, valuing peace and rest. This tranquil presence of Hestia can be a source of healing for the Athena woman who, over time, may find herself overwhelmed by the coldness of her rationality and the emotional distance she creates in her life. The Hestia archetype, the goddess of the sacred fire and the home, carries a symbolic depth that reflects the importance of inner balance, serenity, and spiritual connection to the environment. Her presence in the home represents harmony and sacredness, being fundamental to creating a space of tranquility and warmth. For the woman who embodies this archetype, organizing the physical space becomes more than a simple household task. It is a spiritual practice and a way of establishing inner peace. Like Hestia, she organizes the chaos around her to achieve a deep balance within herself, reflecting the idea of the microcosm and macrocosm. This creates an environment where both the home and the soul can find harmony. Shyness and isolation often characterize a Hestia woman, especially in her youth. She may feel different from others, being seen as introspective or distant. Her energy is directed inward, and solitude, which may be viewed as a form of punishment, actually becomes a source of inner strength. This withdrawal can be difficult for others to understand, but it is a space for healing and reflection for her, where she connects with her deepest essence. Just like Hestia, who spent much of her life alone in Kronos' womb, the woman with this archetype learns to value silent and qualitative time, where everyday activities become moments of self-exploration and personal growth. The Hestia woman does not seek to be at the center of attention or get involved in external conflicts, whether in the form of wars or even romantic dramas. Her inner peace and commitment to the harmony of the home keep her away from these external distractions. She is not a woman who seeks public glory or recognition, but rather someone who finds her identity and purpose in the inner world and in her most intimate relationships. The Hestia archetype also refers to the concept of qualitative time. Instead of focusing on the passage of time, she immerses herself in the present moment, where everything aligns perfectly. For her, life is not measured in hours or minutes, but in the quality of her experiences. This mindset allows her to experience a flow state where external concerns dissipate, and she is fully present, whether performing a household task or engaging in a creative activity, like weaving, which connects the woman to her deepest roots. Despite her reserved nature, the Hestia woman creates a sense of security and peace for those around her. Visitors to her home, even without words, feel the presence of this welcoming energy, as if the space itself were a sanctuary. This sanctuary can be physical, but more importantly, it is emotional. Her ability to transform her home into a place of healing and balance reflects her own inner journey. Throughout her life, a Hestia woman may need to learn how to break the isolation that her introspection creates, especially in moments of challenge or suffering. But in reconnecting with the outside world, she must also learn to maintain the balance that arises from her sacred solitude. This balance between the internal and external is where the Hestia woman finds her power, maintaining her peace while remaining open to the world. The Hestia archetype, with its pursuit of serenity and emotional self-control, can be understood as an expression of emotional self-sufficiency, in which she does not need a man to feel emotionally fulfilled or to give her life purpose. Her life is complete in itself, guided by inner calm and a state of apatheia, where she maintains her peace undisturbed by external turmoil. This state is not indifference but a serenity that allows her to live without being affected by despair or frustration. The Hestia woman has a strong sense of autonomy and emotional independence. She does not seek external validation, nor feels the need for a partner to be complete, as some women in other archetypes might. Her identity is deeply rooted in herself and does not depend on social roles such as wife or mother for her value or meaning. Her strength lies in the inner fire, in her ability to stay balanced and centered, representing a symbol of wholeness, just like the sacred hearth in her temple, which is the center and source of heat, light, and welcome, unconcerned with the external storms. However, the Hestia woman may face challenges related to her disconnection from the external world. Her introverted nature and her distance from social expectations, ambition, or external motivation may be seen as a form of shadow. She may be ignored or underestimated by those who value tangible achievements and visible progress. Her lack of interest in power or recognition may make her feel disconnected or undervalued in a society that prioritizes these qualities. Her energy is directed inward, and as a result, may seem impersonal and distant to those around her who do not understand the depth of her serenity. One of the main tasks for the Hestia woman is to learn how to express her inner feelings. Her natural tendency is to be discreet or reserved, which can result in some emotional emptiness in relationships. She needs to learn to express her deeper emotions, as silence and isolation can create a disconnection with others who may not understand her introspective behavior. Her tendency not to care about the impression she makes on others can be seen as an authentic quality, but it can also distance her from more superficial social interactions. In large gatherings or social events, the Hestia woman may feel inadequate, as if she has nothing to wear emotionally, which can create a feeling of discomfort and disconnection. She may feel disconnected from traditional female roles such as wife and mother, and focus much more on the internal experience of living fully and authentically. When women of other archetypes, such as Hera, Demeter, or Persephone, seek to focus on their own needs for affiliation and connection with others, they may come into conflict with the Hestia women, who have a more diffuse and receptive perception of the world. The awareness of a Hestia woman does not focus exclusively on a specific goal, but rather on the overall experience and the continuous flow of things. This can create difficulty in environments where focused awareness, such as that of men or people in more active roles, clashes with her more fluid way of being. In an environment where relationships become the center of attention, the Hestia woman may feel isolated or disconnected, especially when she tries to express her need for solitude or to focus on everyday tasks. This can create an emotional distancing that affects her relationships, but it is also a reflection of the shadow of her archetype. She needs to balance her relationship with the outside world, learning to open up to others without losing her own essence. Ultimately, Hestia's path is one of balance, of reconciliation between the internal and external, and of emotional self-sufficiency, where she can achieve authentic connections without losing her inner peace and autonomy. She teaches the importance of qualitative time, serenity, and sacred solitude, while seeking to reconnect with others in a way that respects her own need for space and deep reflection. The Hera archetype, with its identity deeply rooted in marriage and the role of wife, represents the pursuit of completeness and recognition through partnership. Her essence is an expression of dedication and commitment to the relationship, seeking prestige, honor, and respect in the marital union. For Hera, marriage is not merely a social institution, but a spiritual path, a process of sacred union, hieros gamos, where the partner is seen as an extension of herself, contributing to a sense of wholeness. Women who embody the Hera archetype often feel a profound emptiness in their psyche when they are alone or when their relationships do not meet their expectations for intimacy and union. The emotional void that the lack of a partner can generate is often described as a wound that never heals, an inner hole that seems impossible to fill, especially if she struggles to maintain long-lasting relationships or resolve marital conflicts. Hera seeks identity and purpose in marriage, and without it, she may feel that she loses meaning or that her life lacks significance. This need for connection and commitment is one of the driving forces of the Hera archetype, and if it is not developed consciously, it can lead to patterns of unsustainable relationships, such as staying in unhealthy marriages or moving from one relationship to another without resolving fundamental emotional issues. For the Hera woman, lack of commitment or superficial relationships can intensify the sense of lost identity and fulfillment. When a Hera-type woman deeply engages in marriage, She does so intensely, with her husband occupying the center of her life. She finds her identity and value through the partnership and the external validation of the union, desiring to be recognized as Mrs. Someone. This desire to belong and be honored is intrinsic to the Hera archetype. However, a lack of reciprocity or respect in the relationship can lead to a sense of self-devaluation, especially if the Hera woman sacrifices herself entirely to maintain the image of the perfect marriage, even in adverse circumstances. Marriage, for Hera, is the culmination of her emotional journey. She sees the wedding day as one of the most significant moments of her life, fulfilling a deep drive for affirmation and belonging. For her, marriage is more than a social contract or a simple union. It represents a mystical journey toward wholeness. She believes that by uniting with her partner, she reaches a state of completeness that she could not achieve alone. And this physical and spiritual connection with her spouse is what gives meaning to her existence. Even after a divorce, the Hera archetype persists. She may continue to see herself as a wife, and in some cases the end of a marriage can be a deep and lasting emotional wound. For the Hera woman, being single or lacking a meaningful relationship can intensify this emptiness, especially in a society that values marital union as an essential source of status and purpose. Another important aspect of the Hera archetype is her tendency to idealize marriage and her belief that, through this union, she can reach a higher level of spiritual and emotional understanding, which can lead to a desire for perfection in the relationship. When confronted with human imperfection, she may feel that something is lacking or flawed that needs to be corrected, which may lead her to try to control or transform her partner to meet her ideal expectations of the relationship. Finally, the Hera woman also faces the challenge of learning to balance her personal needs and her identity outside of the marital context. She must be able to develop a self-identity separate from the marriage, without depending exclusively on the external recognition of the partnership to validate her existence and value. Learning to integrate emotional self-sufficiency without losing her capacity for commitment and deep connection with her partner is an important step for the woman seeking to fully express the Hera archetype in a balanced and healthy way. The shadow of Hera reveals the danger of losing oneself in the marital identity. By overly identifying with her role as a wife, a Hera woman may fail to recognize her own individuality, allowing her sense of who she is and what her purpose in life is to come solely from the role of wife and the status of her husband. She may become emotionally dependent on the value her husband places on the marriage and the relationship, making her happiness conditional on his devotion. If this commitment is not reciprocated, or if her husband does not meet her expectations, the Hera woman may feel that she has lost her value and become emotionally devastated. This lack of self-identity places her in a vulnerable situation, where her self-esteem is exclusively tied to how her husband sees her. This can create a cycle of dissatisfaction and frustration, as she may project an idealized image of her husband and marriage, and when he does not meet these expectations, she feels betrayed or disillusioned. The Hera-type woman, by placing marriage at the center of her life, may begin to lose sight of who she is as an individual, and her identity becomes dependent on the role of wife that she plays. In this context, she may neglect her own emotional needs and personal goals, seeing her life as a complement to her husband's life. This can lead her to submit to his decisions about how she should live, lose her voice in her own choices, and become trapped in the role of supporter or giver, without recognizing what she needs to receive or accomplish for herself. One of the main pitfalls for the Hera woman is idealizing her husband and the relationship, as she seeks something perfect and mystical in her marriage, which should translate into completeness and sacredness. When the husband does not meet the idealized image, or does not fulfill her expectations for total commitment and emotional satisfaction, she may feel empty, as if something essential is missing. This emptiness can lead her to distance herself from herself and lose herself in the relationship, failing to realize that her happiness should not depend exclusively on the partner's validation. Furthermore, avoiding rushing into marriage is an important lesson for the Hera woman. If she rushes into commitment without truly knowing herself and her needs, She may end up making impulsive and premature decisions that place her in a position of emotional submission and excessive dependence on her partner. It is essential for her to cultivate her individual identity before committing to marriage, recognizing that the relationship is not the only source of personal validation. Finally, Hera needs to learn to balance her expectations and accept the other as they are, without projecting onto her partner the responsibility for her happiness. True fulfillment for the Hera woman comes from recognizing her own value and cultivating an identity outside of the relationship, not allowing her husband to determine her life experience. By doing this, she can avoid sadness and emotional emptiness, building a life that is complete in itself, without depending exclusively on another person to define who she is and what she wants.